Okay, so let me know if you guys can hear me. And make sure my headphones are working. So we are here once again, like we are every week. And unfortunately, I have had a slight change in my schedule. Instead of going until 2, we're only going to go until 1:30. So this will just be 2 hours from 11:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. California time. So, again, let me know if you guys can hear me. Let's get this going. Let me open some comments. Hello, Drippy. Welcome, welcome. Hope my headphones don't die. So I'm still having an audio issue with my mic. It's making my voice really deep. I have a new one coming in the mail today. Hopefully that will solve the problem. I don't know if it's the computer or not, but we'll find out. Comments. Okay. Delio, I can hear you just fine. Happy New Year. Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. And yes, Happy New Year. Hopefully it'll be a good year. Unlike, I mean, I guess last year wasn't too bad, but 2020 was crazy. Let's hope 2022 is just moving up. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing too many good comments to bring up here. Is it true that when speaking, I shouldn't move my lips so much and it's more about the tongue? Good question. In general, I would probably agree with that, yes. We do obviously use the lips. There are like the p, b, and m need the lips. The o, oo, and ow need the lips. And then there are some sounds that optionally use the lips, like sh, where the lips kind of come up and out a little bit. Not required to make the sound, but it's a common thing we do. Oh, and the W also needs the lips, obviously. So there are some sounds that require it, but when we're speaking, when we're not clearly enunciating, and we're just sort of speaking normal or really fast or whatever, we don't tend to use the lips as much as we would if we were really clearly enunciating. So like the ooh, instead of being ooh, ooh, it'll come out to be like ooh, ooh, ooh. So there's still motion there that's required. And it's not just static like ooh, ooh. No, it has to be sort of a little rounding around. But you don't have to get as deep. Same thing with the W. Woo, woo, it comes out woo. Comes out quite a bit. It's very, very narrow, but if I'm speaking more quickly, I say why, woo, 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 why. And that's kind of like the normal ending of ooh, wah, wah, wah. So, and then of course there are some sounds like E, right? E, ah, where we might pull the lips to the side. Not required, again, but it is something common that commonly happens, especially when enunciating. So overall, I do think that the tongue, especially the mouth posture, which again I'm going to be talking about soon, the tongue I think is definitely the most important thing overall, but the lips are important for some things, yes. So yeah. Drippy also, in what cases someone with a merger would pronounce words with the original vowel? For for example, you won't pronounce lawyer as liar, or I guess, okay. So the thing with the merger is that there's two things that happened with the merger. Now, people who, first I'll say, people who have the merger, like myself, sometimes we will go and use the unmerged version without realizing it. I'm a little more aware now, so I notice sometimes when I say not, I'll say na, ah, 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 instead of ah, ah, and it goes towards that sort of unmerged middle one. And it happens. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to do that. It's sort of like an artifact that's like left over from like, okay, I have the merger, but I'm exposed to people who don't have the merger, and so my brain just processes out the fact that sometimes I don't use the merger, and I don't even notice it. Um, so that's perfectly normal. Like you don't have to worry about unmerging or anything like that. You can always just use the merger, make it super easy on yourself. That's perfectly normal and fine. Um, but two things happened with the merger, okay? Because there was ah and aw, okay? And that merged into ah, just in the back. So this moves back here. This one that was up here that had the lips come out a bit basically disappeared and kind of moved down into here. So we just have the one sound. Well, people who don't have the merger, if they were to say, for example, or oi, they actually use that oh sound. So they'll say or and oi. So they'll say lawyer, lawyer, okay? Um, but people with the merger, obviously not everything is going to go down here. Now, we don't say lawyer, okay? That's weird. We don't say that. So what happens instead is instead of oh, we replace it with o, and so now it's an R-colored O or an O in the diphthong oi. So instead of saying or, we say or, and instead of saying oi, we say oi. So some things shifted up into O, and some things shifted, most things shifted down into ah. It's really just these combinations like or and oi. I think there might be another one I'm not thinking of, but those go into O instead of ah. And it's not that there are cases where someone with the merger would unmerge it. As I said before, it might happen. I don't think it usually really happens with the or and the oi. Maybe it does less frequently. But for just the pure, ah sound, sometimes we slip out and it's fine. There's no cases where like we do that or we have to do that or whatever. It's just something that happens. So there are no cases where like you have to use the unmerged version. Like you can completely ignore the unmerged two sounds and just make it the one sound, but then keep in mind that words like lawyer are going to use oi instead of the ah sound, the ah sound. And unfortunately, because then you might ask, well, how do I know which one? As I said, most of the time the merger shifted into ah, but it's usually these combination ones that will use the O. I can't think of an example where it wouldn't be or oi. Again, maybe there's one more combination I'm just not thinking of, but like if it's just like a pure vowel, it's not blended with anything, it's not like a diphthong, it's going to be ah. So yeah. How do I speak from the chest? You don't. You don't. This is something that is also tied to the mouth posture thing that I'm going to be talking about. I know that Rachel's English talks about this, and I've seen some other teachers talking about this. So that talks about placement, and I use the word posture for a reason instead of placement. Some of the stuff about placement I think is not wrong. It's just being looked at the wrong way. And I'm going to address all of that with my mouth posture videos. because it's actually what you do with your tongue that will affect your vocal tract. It's not trying to like lower your voice or something. That is what you have to do. It's almost like it's like 90% in the mouth. Um, so when it comes to this detail of speaking from the chest, I think that that is 100% absolute garbage. People will disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't care. I think that that particular detail, that speaking from the chest, is 110% absolute garbage. Okay. Um, because, well, a couple of reasons. I won't go into all the detail. I could easily rant on this. I don't want to spend forever on this point. But one thing, it doesn't make sense to me. So, like, Spanish is supposed to have sort of like maybe a bit of a higher placement, and yet somebody singing in Spanish, or even if they just wanted to do this, like on purpose in their speech, but you hear somebody singing in Spanish, like speaking from the chest is usually something more for like drama or singing. And especially if you listen to like a lot of these like Mexican, like mariachi type singers, they'll be singing in like a really deep sound, like you can hear it's coming from the chest, you know. And I say, "Ay, mi corazón," or whatever it is. Um, and so I think that that concept needs to be completely ignored and thrown out. Do not try to speak from the chest. Do not try to speak from the chest at all. It does the vocal tract come down a little bit in American English? Relatively, yes. But again, it's rooted more in what the tongue is doing. There is a little bit with the muscles around here and the muscles sort of in the back of the throat. And this also ties into the amount of breath that you're doing, because some languages use more breath, some use less. Um, and that ties into all this as well. So again, I'm going to be making videos on the mouth posture and how all of that fits together, and the center of gravity I've been talking about, because that's really um, the key to everything. I've been doing a lot of work with a Patreon member and some students on that, and I've also been playing with it in Spanish myself, and I've learned a lot of little things about that. So I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome, David. Testing new headphones. Well, they're not new necessarily. It's just the other mic that I used before that made my voice really deep. It's still doing that, and I don't know how to fix it. So I'm using my Bluetooth earphones that I usually use for listening to music or talking on the phone. And I hope it's not my computer, but I do have a new mic coming today, and hopefully that won't give me any problems. Especially it's a USB and XLR, so I can plug it into the audio interface, or I can plug it in directly. And if both of those still make my voice sound deep with the new microphone, then it's the computer, and that really sucks because I spent a lot of money on this computer and I only got it like what, 5 months ago or something. So yeah, that would really suck. Okay. I really do like how this computer handles the editing though, because that's one main reason why I got it, because since I still have to edit my own videos on my other computer, to edit or to render, like for the editor to make the video that I can then post, to render it for like a 10-minute video, it would take like an hour to render it. On this computer, it takes like 3 minutes. So definitely a lot faster. But anyway, another lawyer asked question, or question, another lawyer asked word is the last name Sawyer. Yes, that's another one. Good, Sawyer. Lawyer, Sawyer. Also in like, well, this is what loyal, royal, right, where it has an L ending. Same thing. Sawyer, exactly. Yeah. White, welcome, White. Is it okay to start these words? Absolutely, Elizabeth, with a schwa. Elizabeth, yes. Absolutely. It's absolutely wrong. Absolutely. Yeah, so the primary stress in absolutely is on the lu. The secondary stress is on that first syllable. It is possible to reduce that first syllable to a schwa, um, especially if you're speaking quickly. Like that's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely. Might kind of be like kind of like it kind of wants to go into the because it does have secondary stress. But if it comes out as a schwa, it's okay. If you are clearly enunciating the word, or you're emphasizing, which we often do with this word, like that is absolutely wrong. Okay, it's not going to be a schwa. If you say that is absolutely wrong, that that's absolutely wrong. But don't say it that way. So technically possible, yes, but we usually keep that that ab as an a sound, that fourth vowel on the English X vowel chart. Um, Elizabeth, I'm trying to think, is that just how we say it, or is that a reduction? Because we don't say Elizabeth. Well, yeah, okay, I guess you could. You could say Elizabeth, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think E would be the fully enunciated way to say the word, but it's almost always like um, yeah. So that's very normal for the second word. Um, do you ever use the word or exclamation I in casual speech? If so, how do you use it so it sounds natural? Uh, I don't know, like say something unexpected happens that maybe is a problem, and I'm like, "I this is stupid," like, or what's that?" Not really. I assume it's uh, AYE, um, A. I don't think it'd be I. Yeah. So because of Spanish influence, I might use it, but I don't think that's much of an English thing. Maybe there's some English speakers that do that. Also, kind of sounds from an English context. It sounds sort of like a pirate, like meaning yes, because it's like an old way to say yes. So when you're reading considerably fast and your eyes pass through the words "will not," do you mentally read that way, or your brain converts it to "won't"? Curious to know how it works in English. Um, it's an interesting question. I mean, I don't completely know. Like, I can't say, oh yeah, it's this way. Um, it might sometimes. I don't think so though. Um, Especially because not so contracting in both writing and speech, especially in speech, but in writing and speech, contractions are the normal thing. I know other teachers, for some reason, teach you other things. You can find resources online that say contractions are informal. They're not informal, okay? Especially in spoken English, we have more spoken contractions than written contractions. If you do not contract, you will not sound natural. Period. Like, period. It's not about formality at all. I could be talking to the Queen of English, or Queen of English, the Queen of England, and I would still use contractions. Um, Maybe that's because I'm a disrespectful American. I don't know, but uh, so one of the reasons, that being said, one of the reasons why we might uncontract, or might not contract is for emphasis. Like, I will not do that. Right now, I could say I won't do that. It's still emphasized, but if we uncontract it, it kind of makes it just a little bit stronger. It could just come out that way too. Sometimes it just comes out uncontracted, but usually 99% of the time we're going to contract. Now in writing, it is a little bit different. In formal writing, you're not supposed to contract. If it's like a business email or an academic paper, you're not supposed to contract, especially the academic papers. Uh, but in like if you're reading a story or a novel, or article online or something like that, um, if it's not contracted, it could be because it's in writing. like we have a tendency maybe in writing to kind of not want to contract to create maybe a little bit more of a serious tone, or something like that. It has like a little subtle different effect in how it flows. It's a very difficult, subtle thing to explain. Um, and I'm actually horrible at teaching writing because, at least when it comes to nonfiction, like essay writing and stuff, like I'm super, super, super strong at that. I know that's one of my biggest strengths, and because of that, I have I forget what it's called. I call it like expert bias or something, where like it's just so effortless for you that it's hard to teach it. um, so it's kind of difficult for me to describe, but um, maybe that happens sometimes with reading will not as won't, but I don't think we would usually do that. Anuat, welcome, welcome. I can't distinguish the CH or the ch and j sound like bridge, luggage. For me in dictionary online, it sounds like CH all the time. Okay, so first, I noticed you're using IPA. You used IPA for one and not for the other, which is interesting. So the way that English speakers and the way that in my method for English hacks, that I transcribe the j sound and that English speakers would think of the j sound, even though the letter G can sometimes represent that sound, we think of it as like the J sound, right? So I transcribe that so that CH, ch, I would write as CH, right? The j, I would write as J, just for reference. I don't recommend the IPA for American English, but that's a different topic. Now, being able to distinguish it, I do. This probably isn't going to happen anytime soon. It should come later this year at some point. I still have a lot of extra practice lessons to make, and I'm probably going to be making a minimal pair lesson between ch and j, because I know they can be a little hard to hear the difference between. But the key here is that ch is voiceless, and it's a blending of t, which is voiceless, and sh, the sh sound, which is voiceless. And you sort of blend those together, you get ch, which is also voiceless. With j, it's the same exact thing but voiced. So you were taking d, which is voiced, with j, which is like a voiced sh, which doesn't have a spelling. We spell it however we need to spell it in the words that we use it. It's not a common sound, like mirage or garage, j, j, commonly written with maybe a G. And you blend d and j, you get j. Okay, so you're just blending those two sounds. So the two voiceless sounds make a new voiceless sound. The two voiced sounds make a new voiced sound. So in bridge, the way that you can help distinguish is to try to find minimal pairs. So you don't have to wait for my video on that. You can go and I would recommend going to forvo.com, not the dictionary. The dictionary is not a good place for pronunciation information in general. Couple things, but in general, no. Especially if you're following my method. And so you go to Forvo, say you look up, let's see, what are some minimal pairs here? Actually, I don't know if there are a whole lot of minimal pairs that are actual words. But you'll have to think like, for example, there's like bridge, and then like britch is not a word. Britches is a word. So I guess britches and bridges you could maybe compare and just like play one audio, then play the other audio and like, listen to both. Britches would be spelled this way. It's not a very common word. But anyway, you want to try to hear that voiced versus voicelessness. So if it's a CH, like if I try to say a CH in the word bridge, it would be britch, bridge. So the voice of the vowel will stop. And then we hear that ch, that voiceless ch, right? Where in bridge, the voice doesn't stop because j is also voiced. So that voice from the vowel just continues on. bridge, 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 right? And drawing it out like that, maybe you can hear it a little bit more easily. If you can't, that's okay. Just keep training your ears. But then, of course, you want to hear it in the flow of speech. So you do it faster, right? Bridge, 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 bridge. Now, one problem here is, I think I have a lesson on this. It's partial end of word devoicing. If I can spell partial right. Partial end of word devoicing. And it is partial, it's not complete. What a lot of American speakers do, we don't do it all the time, but it is a common thing. It could be with any voiced sound at the end of a word. It doesn't matter if it's j or if it's duh or if it's, you know, z. What we'll commonly do is we'll start just a little bit in that voiced version, and then we'll let the voice go as the word sort of trails off at the end. So for example, if I say is, if I say very clearly, we want to hear a full Z, is, right? That is correct. Actually, you might have noticed right there, I did a little bit of an S. If I'm not trying to enunciate super clearly, is, okay. So there's this partial devoicing. We start in the Z and then end in the S, which is the voiceless version. So it's devoiced. The voice is sort of removed at the very end. Now that can happen in the word bridge. So if I say nice and clearly, bridge, right? It's all the way through bridge. But commonly, not all the time, again, you don't have to do this, I don't think. And it's just something that happens. But you might hear somebody say bridge, bridge. So it'll start with that j, and then it'll kind of go into sh, right? So it's really that end part, because we have to close here for the T or D, but once it's released, so it's going to start like in a D, and then it's going to shift into the sh kind of, so it's like D and like D and sh almost, instead of D and j. That can happen. Again, I don't recommend that you like really try to do that, because you're probably going to mess it up. It's really easy to mess it up, especially in this particular combination. But it's something that happens. And I think that it's, if you focus on other things, like saying the sounds correctly, focus on like your flow, your stress, your rhythm, all that stuff, this partial end of word devoicing will kind of, it might naturally develop. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I don't think you need it to sound natural. So anyway, it's kind of tough. You just train your ears. At the end of the day, that's what it is. You just got to train your ears and focus on really hearing that voiced versus voicelessness. Okay. But I grew attached to the deep voice effect. Yeah, I know. Is it weird if I make a D instead of flapping it? Saying tomorrow like tomorrow. Also, are there two different types of Ds? One more flapper light, the other similar to a T with that Christmas, like touching an iron, but it's not a T. If so, they're not interchangeable, right? Wondering if that light or flat D is a misunderstanding of my part, on my part, or if it does really happen, saying to like do. Okay, so I have a lesson. I actually have two lessons. One talking about the 4 Ds and the 4 Ts. I think it's 4 Ds and 4 Ts. Let's see here. Yeah, I have to search for it here. 4 T sounds. Okay, so this is on the T, and actually the D one you should watch first, because I'm pretty sure I have that one up first for a reason. So 4 D sounds. That didn't even come up. Okay, D sound. There it is. Yeah, the 4 Ds. Get shareable link. Paste. So that's the D lesson. And then the T lesson which T has an extra special detail. It works basically like the D, except generally it's voiceless. But there's no flapped T. It's some teachers call it a flapped T because it's written with a T, but there's no T sound, so that doesn't make any sense. That focuses on the spelling, not the sound, and you always want to focus on the sound, not the spelling. It's one of the biggest teaching mistakes, I think, in my opinion. So the answer to your question is maybe yes and no. Specifically saying, for example, like tomorrow, like tomorrow with a flap D. So words like tonight, tomorrow, I think there's another one. Tonight, tomorrow, today, of course. These are special cases. So generally what will happen if you have a T, it's at the start of an unstressed syllable and it doesn't have two vowels around it, which the other vowel could come from the word before it, it's fine. But if it's not at the start of an unstressed syllable and has those two vowels before it, or two vowels around it, it's not going to flap. It's not going to turn into a flap D. If it's at the start of an unstressed syllable and it doesn't have those two vowels, it'll be a weak T. Okay. There are some special exceptions and cases, but when it comes to the words tomorrow, today, and tonight, historically, this is actually a combination of tonight, today, and tomorrow. Okay. Morrow, which this is still true in German, the word morgen, which is probably a horrible pronunciation there, but morgen, if I remember right, it means morning and it means tomorrow. My German's very rusty, so maybe I'm wrong about that. But in English, we used to say, like, this was a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, people used to say like something like, I will see you on the morrow. So like the next day. And so morrow means like morning, basically. And at some point we started combining to, which points to the end point of whatever is next, right? That's the logic of the preposition to. I talk about in my logic of preposition to video and in my book. So it's literally to the morrow, the next day, right? To the next morning. And it just these days it just refers to the whole day. It's not specifically the next morning. Where tonight is like this night. It's to this night, right? Tonight. And then today is like to this day. So it's today. Now, because of that, because it's actually a combination of to, the preposition to, when we're talking about the pronunciation of that T, is very, 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 very special because it is very easy, it's very susceptible, easy to change, or easily affected by what's before it. So for example, if I say go and to will usually reduce to t, so the vowel will change. It doesn't have to, but it usually will. And then because that vowel before it is voiced, the T ends up becoming a flat D. So we say go to, or even go to. So if you have tomorrow, like I'm going to go tomorrow, okay, you could push it out as a T, that's fine. Or you can say I'm going to go tomorrow, go tomorrow. Now, if tomorrow is the first word in the sentence, there is no way that you can change it. It has to be a weak T because there's nothing before it to trigger the flap. Plus, we never start with the flap. Like the flap is in the flow. So if it's like it might be at the start of a word, that can happen depending on what's before it. But if it's like the first word, if it's the first word in the sentence, you cannot do a flap. It's impossible to start from the flap. We just don't do it. So, I mean, it's not physically impossible, but in English, it's impossible. So if you say, tomorrow, I'm going to go to the beach, you cannot try to flap that or change it into a D. It has to be a T. So hopefully that answers your question. For the general, like the different types of Ds or Ts or whatever, check out those lessons. Let me know if you have other questions later. Yeah, I actually liked it. Yeah, well, whatever. Deep voice is gone. Hopefully. By the way, the other day I discovered some native speakers apparently disagree on what the correct pronunciation of abdomen is. Some strongly prefer abdomen, while others like to say abdomen. Well, I would be in the first group. Yeah, I'm definitely in the first group. Why would anybody say it that way? Abdomen? Like that's not even a word. Um, Maybe it's abdomen or something, because we do say abdominals, like your abdominal muscles. So that's true. That it would switch there and it would be but if it's your abdomen, if they're natives, I can't technically say they're wrong, but I really want to say that's wrong. um, I like Josh's voice. It is, but it makes for a nice change of mind. Nightcore version. Yeah, right. Anyway, I don't think you're gonna get a Nightcore version. How to understand English movies in American accent? How to learn American accent? Okay, so welcome, Fearingiz. Probably saying that wrong. I'll call you Fear or Fur. Fear, Fur. I don't know. Whatever you want. So okay, so we're talking about listening skills and pronunciation. So how to learn the American accent? I have an entire course that I'm not 100% done with. I'm going to try to finish it in these next 3 months. That's the plan. That is going to take you from 0 to, as close as possible. You do still need feedback. I need to make some more videos on the techniques. But there are certain standard techniques like micro adjustments to try to find the sounds, shadowing. I'm going to be talking about mouth posture, which I think is really the key at this point. And that's how you would produce it. There's also ear training to hear the difference between sounds that you can't hear the difference between. All of that is in the course. And whatever's not in the course now is coming. So I would start there. Let me go to my playlists. Well, let me share it. Okay, I'm gonna click on this. Copy. Okay, that's the playlist for the pronunciation course. As far as listening goes, so as I said, ear training is the base, regardless of if you want to sound like a native or not. Training your ears will help open the entire spoken language to you, because now you can hear the difference between sounds, you can hear the stress, you can hear the rhythm, et cetera, et cetera. So whether it's a movie, TV show, could be even music or whatever, there are certain techniques within pronunciation, mostly ear training, minimal pairs, things like that. And then there are listening techniques and skills. What I recommend, whatever language you're learning and whatever dialect you're learning, it does not matter. The best thing that you can do to improve your listening skills is to find, aside from ear training, is to find some series, not a movie, some series, a TV series, that has preferably at least like say 3 seasons, maybe more. So Friends is a very popular, good option. And you can watch the first season with subtitles, okay? And that could even be in your native language. It doesn't really matter. The point is that in that first season, you want to get into the story, you want to get to know the characters so that you are then invested, right? You want to see what happens. Especially if it's a drama. Like Friends is a sitcom, which is nice, but it's kind of like things are always changing through the story. Where if it's like a drama, it's like one continuous, big dramatic storyline. So dramas are really, really good for this. But regardless, it could even be like a cartoon. It doesn't matter as long as there's lots of material. And first season with subtitles. You don't have to do it with subtitles, but I do recommend so you can get into the story and get attached to the characters. And then after that first season, no subtitles, no English subtitles, no other language subtitles, nothing. You are just completely watching, listening, trying to understand as much as you can, and trying to follow the story as best as you can. This is why you need to be, well, you don't need to, but this is why it really helps to be attached to the characters and really want to see what happens. Because if you start from the beginning and you already can't understand what's going on, it's harder to get into the story and want to continue. But once you're in the story, and then you say, okay, I'm going to turn off all the subtitles. Now you still want to watch, even if you don't understand everything. And don't worry about understanding everything. You don't have to understand everything. You can have, say, 40% or 30% comprehension of what's going on in terms of being able to understand what you hear. Just keep going through all the seasons. Okay. By the time, if you finish, say something that has like 3 seasons at least, by the time you finish that, um, you'll you'll probably notice a marked increase, like a very clear increase in your listening ability. And it might even feel like magic. That's what happened to me. I discovered that on accident. And it didn't fix all of my listening problems. I still needed more vocabulary. I still, couldn't understand some things that I heard in the flow of fast speech, but it took me from like here up to here. Right, so it helped a lot. I did it again later with another series in Spanish, and that gave me another little boost. So definitely one of the best things that you can do. Okay, for foyer, foyer, there we go, foyer. Would you say it like a real American? Foyer, or would you do the highly sophisticated foyer? Yeah, so we already know the answer there based on how I said it. It's actually funny because my friend, like just the other week, I don't know how it came up, but she said something about like the foyer. I was just like, it's foyer. That's how it's supposed to be pronounced. But I mean, yeah, we really Americanize it. I'm pretty sure that's another word that came from French, and you know, uh, it is what it is. I think because it's such an uncommon word these days, like people might see it somewhere, but they don't hear it. Or because it's so uncommon, like people started saying it as foyer, and then they learned it to be pronounced that way, even though it's supposed to be foyer. And so some Americans will say foyer, which I guess is okay, but I don't pronounce it that way. But yeah, it does sound very fancy to say foyer. What do you think the IPA is inaccurate? Interesting question. It's in my to-do list to study. I even saved some of the symbols in my phone keyboard. A bunch of nonsense. The majority of them I don't know which sound represents. Okay, so which sound the symbol represents. Okay, I'm going to make a video on why I don't recommend the IPA. I have quite a few reasons. I can never remember all of them off the top of my head. I do think that there are some uses for the IPA, like especially if you're starting a language, it helps you, especially if you're looking at the vowel chart and where the vowels are approximately, supposed to be in the mouth. It can help you, like say if you're learning Spanish and you look at the Spanish vowel chart and they have the sound eh, and then you look at the American English vowel chart, and we have the sound eh, and then we do have the sound eh, but only in the diphthong a. It doesn't exist as an individual sound. So if you know that, right, in your language, like, oh, okay, so this is like the sound in a, but just the start of it, it may not be 100% the same in the other language. There might be something a little bit different about it, but it's probably going to be close enough. It's going to be a very similar type sound. And so you can say, okay, so I already kind of have that sound. Or like a very common sound is the E, right? Usually written with a lowercase I. Sounds a little bit different in different languages. Almost the same. Sounds very, very, very similar across languages, in my experience: Russian, Spanish, German. Portuguese, but it's not always exactly the same. And so knowing that gives you a good idea of kind of like, okay, what sounds do I already have approximately in this new language? And what sounds maybe do I need? And then again, looking at the vowel chart, approximately where those sounds are supposed to be and what part of the tongue you're supposed to use. So that could be very, very useful. In my opinion, whether it's language learning or it's music or it's whatever, when there's academics and there's skill. Okay. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and one of the biggest problems with teaching skills in school, I don't care if it's elementary, high school, university, one of the biggest problems and mistakes is that there tends to be a confusion between knowledge and skill. These are two completely separate things. Knowledge can help with skill, obviously. But let's say, for example, in English, let's say you could pass a C2 level, right? European framework, C2 is the highest level, supposed to be native-like bilingual. Say you can pass a C2 level grammar test in English, right? 100% score. You didn't miss a single question. Bam, you perfect grammar knowledge, okay? And let's say you even, you take a test and it says 3,000 words, okay? And then you go to try to speak to somebody and you're like, hi? It's like you can't, because you didn't practice speaking. That's a skill. And then of course they're speaking to you, all these words, all this grammar, and yet you can't understand what they're saying, even if they speak slowly to you. Maybe if they speak slowly, but definitely not in the flow of real speech. And so English, but you don't have the skill of understanding or speaking English. There's two completely different things. They are connected, but they're two completely different things. When it comes to pronunciation, the IPA is not a tool, generally, it's not a tool for language learners, in my opinion. It's a tool for linguists, okay? If you are an academic studying languages, the IPA is a fantastic tool. If you're a language learner, especially if you're learning American English in particular, but if you're a language learner, like I was saying, with the vowel chart and kind of saying, okay, I have these similar sounds in my language, it can kind of help get you started, help you kind of, figure out maybe what's new or what's different in this language a little bit. The exact symbols don't really matter that much. And so there are some uses for it. But I think in any field, the knowledge academic area, only about 10 to 20% of that is actually useful for developing the skill. Most of it is just academic speculation and hair splitting and whatever. It's not actually useful, and some of the knowledge might be interesting. If you're interested in it, go ahead and learn it. I'm not saying don't learn it, but if you're learning it for the purpose of improving your pronunciation, I would not recommend it at all. Unless again, it's in that sort of basic little way of figuring out what's what between languages. There's something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, as for the accuracy of the IPA, there are some problems with that too, because number one, like if you go on Wikipedia and you look up, I think for example, it's the ah sound, and you play the audio file that they have for ah, it does not sound like ah at all. Maybe it's a form of ah, but it's definitely not the American English ah. You even go between, like, say, British English and American English, and it's the same IPA symbol, if I'm not mistaken, and yet the British ah sounds British. It doesn't sound 100% the same. I was working with a Patreon member quite a while ago who speaks Hindi, and Hindi apparently has the sound I, like an it, right? Not E or E, but I, the sound in between. And he was trying to get the sound in English, and I was like, it's close, it's not quite there. And so he sent me some, like a video, where it was somebody speaking in Hindi talking about the I sound. And so obviously I couldn't understand the Hindi, but I was listening to how this person was pronouncing the I sound, and I could tell it sounded like I. It was like it was the same sound. It uses the same symbol in IPA, but it didn't sound English. It's like a different quality of the same sound. And so just because the symbol is the same doesn't mean it's exactly the same between languages, and you'll still have an accent if you don't adjust it. Even for example, in the IPA, if you look on the vowel chart for English and Hindi, that I, which is like a capital I in IPA, that I sound in English is like towards the front of the mouth up here, but in Hindi it's like back here a bit, and so it's even in a like a, I mean, still in the front of the mouth more or less, but it's in like a completely different place. And so, eh, in my personal opinion, I think there are problems with the IPA. I'm not a linguist. Maybe I'm wrong. But in my experience and what I've seen between languages, I don't think it's the most accurate tool. And it's definitely not required. At the end of the day, it is definitely not a requirement. If you focus on your ears, see, the biggest problem with the IPA, in my opinion, is that it forces you to continue focusing on your eyes. So instead of learning, um, English does not have a phonetic writing system, so it kind of makes sense. Like if you're learning Spanish, things are spelled how they sound, right? And so that obviously, like, you don't need the IPA for that for sure. Like just get used to how it sounds and how it's spelled, how the spelling works in combination with the sounds. In a language like English, we do have patterns, but obviously there are usually exceptions to pretty much everything. Um, and so it might be more tempting to use something like the IPA, but all you're doing, see, like all these symbols that you wrote, you now have a new, not the entire IPA alphabet, obviously you're not trying to learn every symbol, just the ones that are relevant to English. But you now have a new sort of set, like a new alphabet sort of, that you have to memorize and put into your brain. And then what happens? Well, you say, oh, this sound, this word, is that this sound or that sound? Let me go check the dictionary. And then you look with your eyes, and that can be useful, but now you look with your eyes, you say, okay, yeah, the dictionary tells me that it's this one. Um, and that can be a crutch. It can help you in some way, but again, you're still focusing on your eyes. You don't want to focus on your eyes. You want to focus on your ears, 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 ears. If you are learning how to read and write, you're focusing on your eyes. That's with the spelling patterns, all that stuff. You want to separate the spelling and the sound, especially in English, okay, because they don't often match. You want to separate those out. They're two completely different worlds. Reading and writing is one input-output pair that is not speaking and listening. Obviously, they're connected, but they're two completely different skill sets. Okay, which is why you can be, say, if you're a native speaker of Spanish, but you never learned how to read and write, you can still speak the language perfectly well. You just can't read and write. Okay, because it's a different skill set. Or let's say you're studying ancient Greek or ancient, Latin or Sanskrit or something that nobody really speaks anymore. You can learn how to read it, but nobody speaks it. We don't really know how it sounds, right? And maybe there's some ways to tell like how certain things sounded or this or that or whatever. A linguist might be able to tell you better, but regardless, nobody really speaks it anymore. And so you're definitely not going to be speaking it to somebody else. You're not going to be using that skill. You're going to be using your eyes for that ancient script, right? And so that's appropriate. But if you're trying to improve your spoken language and you're trying to improve your ability to understand spoken language, you need to focus on sound, not spelling, not symbols, not written characters, sound. Okay. I think the IPA largely just gets in the way of that. And as I said, makes you focus more on your eyes than your ears. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my little rant on the IPA. That was several of the reasons that I don't recommend the IPA. And no, I don't think it's completely accurate in my personal opinion, but I strongly recommend that you just ignore that. I do have, it should be in the description of this video even, a link to the English Hacks phonetic transcription method. So I have my own transcription method that's based on, normal English letters. But when I transcribe it, it's like this spelling always represents this, right? So like the CH in English, like the word chef is spelled with CH, but it's an SH sound. It's one of the exceptions. So I would write, if I transcribe chef, I would write with an SH, which I always use for the sh sound. And if it's like chime, then I would always write that with a CH. And some people told me that my method is a little more confusing, it's a little more difficult, but a lot of people have told me that my method is preferable. They like it better. And again, my focus is always again on the sound. And so I'm kind of getting rid of the need for that separate alphabet and just saying, okay, this in my method will always be this. This will always be this. And once you get used to that, it's pretty easy. Okay, Drippy, is it possible for someone that learns a second language to sound like an absolute native speaker, or at some point people could tell they're foreign since there's age limit for acquiring a perfect one? Okay, so there's an age limit. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about this. And I talked about this a bit before. I do think that obviously not everybody is the same, okay? People have strengths, people have weaknesses, and then there's the average, right? Obviously, most people for any skill, music, language, whatever, most people will fall in the average. That's why it's called average, right? If somebody wants to learn a skill, let's say a language, they want to be able to pronounce, like sound exactly like a native, okay? If you are below average in your linguistic ability, just because that's how your brain works, it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's just, most people would think, oh, I'm not good at languages, but that's just because, they go through the traditional system, which doesn't work. Most people are good at languages because you already speak one. You're probably in the average thing, which means you should be able to learn a language perfectly fine. But there are some people who would be below average. Now, if you're below average, I don't know if it's possible. Might be with a lot of extra effort, a lot of extra time, maybe you can still get up there. But below average people might not be able to do that. The average person, I do very, very strongly believe that for the average person, especially if you're talented, but for the average person, with the right techniques, with the right consistency, and the right motivation to keep going, because the more you go, we get the law of diminishing returns. So we do the vowels first, that's like 80% of the problem, and then from there there's other little things like the stress, certain consonants, blah blah blah, then you get smaller and smaller benefit as you go along. So it does take some time, but with the right techniques, with the right consistency, with the right motivation, to reach that level, I do think that it is possible for the average person to get there. Is it worth it for the average person to get there? Probably not. I think most people would either not care. They're just like, I just want to communicate. I don't care if I sound like a native or not. Or they're going to reach, say, like maybe 80, 90% of the progress. And like, well, I sound really good. It's fine. I don't, want to put in the extra effort for the remainder of the part. A lot of my students have been like that, where, they come to me saying like, oh yeah, I want to sound like a native, or, as close to a native as I can get. They reach a certain point. They're not quite there 100%, but their accent is mostly gone, and they sound really great, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm fine. So if you really want it, as long as you're not below average, if you really want it, I do strongly believe that yes, you can. Now, obviously, speaking a foreign language, the longer you speak, the more there's a chance for something to go wrong, and the more likely a native speaker might tell, that's a little weird there, right? And so trying to fool a native for say 5 minutes, yeah, definitely possible. 10 minutes, definitely possible. 100% of the time, I think also possible. But if you want to be able to pull it off 100% of the time, that's really the ultimate test right there. We have, for example, polyglots. Two quick stories of polyglots. Luca Lampariello, fantastic polyglot. I like a lot of his techniques and ideas. He learned an American accent without going to America. I don't know if he's been to America by now, but he learned American English without going to America. And if you listen to him speak, right, if you're not a native, you might be like, wow, this guy sounds perfect. But as a native speaker, I can tell every once in a while, there's something that's just a tiny bit off, a tiny bit. But otherwise, I would say he sounds perfect. And that's fantastic, right? It's absolutely fantastic. I've talked to some Spanish speakers who said that his Spanish sounds perfect. He sounds like a native. Obviously, he's an Italian speaker, so Spanish is a little bit closer there. It's probably easier for him to adjust to. Also, Idausa Ness, spelled Idahosa. Idahosa. Very, very, very awesome person. I haven't met him personally. Before I even really discovered him, I developed a lot of similar ideas, like the micro adjustments and stuff, just like guided by my own instincts and stuff, since I do have some talent for this apparently. And then I found, I was like, oh, hey, we talk about, like, we even use similar terms like micro adjustments. And he is very big on like pronunciation first. I know he's a fan of the IPA. So it's kind of interesting how I'm not and he is, but him and I think would agree on a lot of things. And it's a lot about, like, focusing on the mouth, focusing on the ears, getting the sound system first before learning how to read and write. And he has a story I read, I think, on his blog a long time ago or something, where he said he went to Germany, and I don't know how long he was talking to the person. It was maybe 5-10 minutes or something, but he's just having this casual conversation with this stranger in Germany, and the person asked him, so what part of Germany are you from? Right, even if it's just for 5 minutes, if somebody can ask you that, you've won. You've won at that point. So yeah, it's hard to say on the upper end of like 100% of the time, and pushing to really get to that point. It is a lot of work. It will take time to get there. But to get 90-95% where like you don't really have much of an accent anymore, it's just something sound a little bit off. Yeah, it's definitely doable by the average person for sure. I just don't think most people have the motivation to get all the way to that 100%. Some people do, some people don't, and that's fine. So yeah, and the age, obviously when you're younger, you absorb the pronunciation, you absorb the vocabulary, the grammar, the pronunciation, because the brain is still sort of wired that way. After a certain age, your brain starts getting rid of the connections it needs to like perceive other sounds and stuff. And you can train your brain to start hearing different sounds. It's through ear training and stuff, so it's not like it's lost forever. But and again, some people are a little bit different. But what was I going to say? I lost my thought there. Oh yeah, for age, after a certain age, you can still absorb, maybe not as easily, but you can still absorb grammar and vocabulary. Like you never really have to study grammar and vocabulary. I think it's useful and can help speed up the process if you do it right, but it's not required. But for pronunciation, you will not absorb the pronunciation. You have to put in a conscious effort to actually like build the neural connections in your brain, just like if you're learning any skill. If you want to learn the guitar, which again, age is not a big factor in anything. People would say, oh, I'm too old to learn how to program, I'm too old to learn music, I'm too old to learn a language. No, it's garbage nonsense. And it's stupid. But let's say you're 20, right, or 25 or 30 or whatever, you're still pretty young. You want to learn the guitar, okay, any new skill, you can't just magically like, oh look, I could do this. No, you have to train your brain and your fingers to do that. And then as it gets easier, you're building these connections in your brain where it just happens, right? It's exactly the same in a new language. You can train your ears and train your mouth to where it just happens. You just have to consciously go through that process of acquiring it instead of absorbing it like if you were younger, like a child. So should we learn what vowel shifts occur when speaking fast or lazy, or is it just happen naturally by simply speaking fast, lazy? Good question. I think you don't have to care too much about this. it's probably useful to know what tends to happen. Like for example, with like the lazy ah, right? Like I don't know if anybody talks about the lazy ah. That's what I call it. So maybe it's called something else. But you know, if you're just taught like, oh, ah is always ah ah ah, right? And so you say if you're always doing it that way, and you're trying to speak more quickly, it's probably naturally going to happen that you just don't open as much, right? As long as you hit that same sound, you don't open as much, then it's fine. Now, if you don't open as much and you start making an eh sound, you're like, okay, this is a problem. But if you don't know that there's a lazy version of ah, you might say like, okay, even though I'm speaking faster, I have to make sure to open my mouth and really go into that full ah when you don't have to. So some of the knowledge can help with that, knowing what to do and what can sort of be reduced or made lazy. Um, and I'm gonna have a whole series on like the full range of different sounds and stuff. But I think most of it will happen naturally. Yeah. Um, and again, that's why we want to focus first on like the clearly enunciated, more or less perfect version, because if you can get, especially with the mouth posture, if you can get that set up right to where like you sound good if you're intentionally trying to speak clearly, from there, it's kind of just speeding it up and then not completely hitting all of those points, just like well enough, but not 100%. And that's sort of the faster, lazy version. Yeah. In general, 4 of them each. I'm going to watch the lessons after the live about the T's and D's things. No problem. Yeah, I know there's a lot. It's actually part of a range, which I'm going to be making a lesson for, like the full range of the T's and D's. I already have a lesson for the full range of the TH sound and the schwa. But I'm going to be making one on the T's and D's. It actually fits on a scale from like fully enunciated to potentially dropped. And I don't think I mentioned that in those lessons because I hadn't quite realized that concept yet, but that'll be coming soon. I've talked about that before in the live streams. Can the TH turn into an SH in fourth shot? It's the fourth shot. Technically, yes. This is what I call, I can't even remember what I call it right now. It's under assimilation, the technical term. Shifting, I call it shifting. If you're speaking clearly, no, right? Remember, if you're speaking clearly, we want to hear everything. So it's like, this is the fourth shot. And you might, sometimes it might just come out that way. You might have a reason to maybe kind of, push it out. But if you're just speaking normally or quickly, yeah, oh, this is the fourth shot, fourth shot, fourth shot. So it sounds like 4 shot. You might hit a little bit of the TH, like a lazy TH kind of, but it can kind of just turn into that SH, it's fine. Number 1, how helpful is shadowing? And 2, should I start shadowing only after mastering all the vowels? Good question. Very good question, Trippy. Shadowing, aside from this mouth posture thing that I keep mentioning, which at this point I think is like the core foundation, shadowing is the number 1 technique for words to an extent, but especially phrases and sentences. Okay, there's different levels, right? If we're at the base level, which is individual sounds, then I mean, if you listen and repeat to like a sound, like you hear ah and you try to say ah, technically you're shadowing, right? But we don't really think of that as shadowing necessarily. You're just kind of trying to like repeat the sound, maybe make little micro adjustments. That's the big technique at that level. It's like making those little micro adjustments and trying to get your tongue to produce that right sound. We go up to the word level, and now you're starting to, well, the syllable level, there's a syllable into words, which that kind of blends, like a is a word, but it's also just 1 syllable. But you go into the syllable and word level, and you're starting to string sounds together. And so there's the transition between sounds. Like if I go from woo to ah to I don't know what that would spell. Or let's say k to ah to t, right? Cat. Maybe if you go from k to ah, your a normally sounds great if you do it by itself, but if you go from k to a, there's something a little bit off, and so you have a transition problem. Maybe your k is good, your a is good, but you're not transitioning right, and it's making it sound weird, or it's making your a sound wrong or something. So the syllable and word level, you're focused on the transition between sounds, flowing between sounds, and shadowing starts to come in a little bit more there because you can repeat words and make sure that okay, I'm doing this sound into that sound, and how does my mouth feel as I'm going from sound to sound. But when you get up to multiple words, phrases, sentences, whatever, um, now we're bringing in things like word stress. Even at the word level, if it's a multi-syllable word, we start getting word stress. But especially at the phrase level, we start getting word stress. We start getting sentence level stress. We start getting um, the rhythm of the language. So all these other pieces start to come in at that higher level. And shadowing is good. You can target the rhythm with shadowing. You can target the stress pattern with shadowing. You can target the sounds, like flowing through all the sounds in the sentence with shadowing. And I recommend that you break it into different passes for like the same sentence instead of trying to do everything at once right away, because you're not going to be able to keep track of everything the first time. So shadowing is one of the key techniques. So it's super helpful. Yes. Not some polyglots say they don't shadow, so it's probably not required. um, but it's definitely helpful. Just like learning grammar isn't required, but it's helpful if you learn the right grammar at the right time. My throat is a little dry. Okay, and then should I start shadowing only after mastering all the vowels? That's also a really good question. There's no right answer here, but in general, I would say yes, because nailing those vowel sounds, like if you can't hit the right vowel sounds, why are you even shadowing, right? It's like you can't put those vowels into words or into sentences if you can't even produce the vowel, right? Um, so as I said, it all starts at that sound level, the individual sounds. Now, some people like start from the top down. They'll start at the sentence level and work their way down to the sounds. I think Luca Lampariello does that. So again, there's no right answer. There's different things that you can do. Me personally, I like to build from the ground up, and I like to kind of mix it a bit where there's like, like I really start at the sounds first for, like, say if I were to do an experiment, I say, okay, I'm going to learn, I don't know, Korean, for the next 3 months or whatever. The very first thing that I would do is get the sounds. Like, what are the sounds? What are the sounds that are different from English to between English and Korean, especially the vowel sounds, and start trying to play with those and figure out what to do with my mouth. I wouldn't sit there and try to master them before moving on. I would start bringing in other elements, like start bringing in some words, start bringing in maybe some phrases, even if I don't have those sounds mastered, but I'm in the process of mastering them. I don't think it's the best idea to, this depends on what we're talking about. There's nuance, but when it comes to this topic, I don't think it's always best to try to completely master everything, especially because, as I said, when you're going from sound to sound, maybe you go from k to a, your a is fine, but now it's off, right? And so you spent all this time mastering a, but then you still have this problem, right? So obviously it would help if like okay, I know a is here, but I don't think you have to put in like all that effort to 100% master it before starting to get up to a little bit the higher levels and blending things. Um, so it depends on how you want to approach it. If you want to master all the vowels first and have them sound perfect, you can do that. Um, if you have the patience to get through all of that without doing anything else, right? I think a lot of people, they're like, okay, yeah, I kind of want to get into the words and the sentences and get to the interesting juicy stuff instead of just these basic sounds. And you can continue to improve them as you work with the other things, but I would start there for sure. My opinion, relying on the IPA will lead you astray because while it can help one see through the mess that is English spelling at the beginning, It can also lead to more confusion down the line because the transcription most dictionaries uses broad as opposed to narrow. That means you might hear a speaker in a dictionary do a dental D in birthday, yeah. And yet you'll see it transcribed as birthday, or you'll see rang transcribed as rang with a, even though the audio clearly says rang. See the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Always rely on your ears first and only use the IPA as a secondary learning tool. Exactly, David. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Couldn't have said that better. Yes. And this is from an English learner. Guys, David is not a native speaker. So David's been through it, right? All right. Sergio, hello. Welcome. Delio. Okay. Now, as I said at the beginning, I know a lot of you guys weren't here yet. I do have a bit of a schedule change in my time, my availability. And I'm going to have to, instead of doing 2.5 hours from 11:30 to 2, I'm going to have to cut back a half hour. I won't cut it any more than that unless something really drastic changes, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. So it'll be a solid 2 hours, which means that we're only going till 1:30 today. So we have about 45 more minutes. Keep that in mind. I know we have lots of questions and I'm here to help you guys, but my stuff is changing a bit. So sometimes when I speak English, my mind goes faster than my mouth. Yeah, as it were, and I stumble on my words. Yeah, that can be a common problem. I think one of the final pieces of the puzzle for me is being able to speak with minimum movement of the articulators. Okay, to my surprise, being sparing with how I use my articulators is proving to be ideal to sound as close to me as possible. That's what we do. We don't. That's what I'm telling you guys. If you try to enunciate all the time, everything, you're not going to sound natural because we don't do that, right? Like I said, if you try to enunciate everything all the time, you are not going to sound natural. That doesn't sound very, like maybe for a short little thing, if I'm trying to make it clear to you, yeah, okay, you could do that. But if you speak that way all the time, it's not how we speak. So perfect. Yes, you're realizing, right, the truth about not just English, but all languages. Like there's the enunciated version and then there's the faster version. Um, okay. Moreover, I feel like all the reductions and changes that we often talk about are ultimately leading to inefficient use of the articulars. Exactly. That's why they exist. There's not like some rule that says, hey, this is going to be this way just because some person said so. No, it's like it exists because it developed through speech, right? That's why we reduce things. And obviously the rhythm in English is a big part that affects, English reductions in particular. So there's parts of the language that affect other parts, but it naturally, the reductions and stuff grow out of the language itself. They're not like some academic thing that say, oh, hey, you have to do this. Okay, so what do you think I should do to speak that way? I have an inkling that this somehow ties into the mouth posture thing. It does. It very much does. That was a long question. Sorry about that. No problem. No problem. So, yeah, no, this is a very good question. You don't have to get the mouth posture. Like, if you want to sound 100% native, I do think the mouth posture is important. And I think some people, especially because I don't find a whole lot of stuff talking about mouth posture, especially between languages. It's like almost impossible to find anything. And it seems like because there are some polyglots that sound native like or very very close in other languages, and I've never heard them talk about posture. So I'm pretty sure Idausa is talented with languages or with pronunciation particularly, and I tried to look up like Idausa Ness mimic method, mouth posture, even mouth placement or whatever, and I couldn't really. Maybe I just missed something, but I couldn't really find him talking about it, and so um, I don't think having that as a conscious concept is absolutely required. I do think that you can maybe subconsciously adjust to it if you're talented. But it does seem to me the more that I explore this, that if you want to sound 100% native, it is something that has to happen. There's a mouth posture shift. And I mean, you don't have to have the right mouth posture to use reductions, right? You don't have to have the mouth posture to, um, minimize your use of your articulators and stuff. Um, but if you want to sound more native-like and do the reductions and not have to move your mouth quite as much, having that mouth posture is like the ground floor. Because, for example, Spanish and Russian are supposed to be more closed, and fronted a little bit, and so you have less space in the mouth. Well, if you try to do a W from there, what's going to happen? Ooh, 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 right? My lips are coming out just the same. Ooh, 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 ooh. It doesn't sound like a W, at least not an English W, right? Why? Because there's no space in the mouth. Um, so there's a certain, this is different, not just, it's not like all English, right? There's like Scottish English seems to use more of the back, British English seems to use more of the front, American English uses more of the middle. Okay, so and it's down a little bit. So um, if you can get that, if you want to speak American English and sound American, if you don't have enough space in your mouth, uh, a lot of the sounds, and maybe not all of the sounds, but a lot of the sounds, some consonants and probably most of the vowels are just not going to sound right. Like even for E and oo, which are very closed and up here, there's still, like, say the E is closed up here, but back here there's still quite a bit of space, right? It's not like it's pushed way down or anything, but there's still a lot of space. Where I think in Spanish, I'm experimenting with this, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems that if I try to do, because I know the Spanish E on the vowel chart it looks like it's a little bit farther forward because the tongue is actually pushed forward a little bit. So if I try to push my tongue forward a little bit, still keep the sound around here, but actually give less space, so like back here to where it's a little more closed, um, but still focusing up here more. To me, it seems to sound better. It sounds a little more Spanish, like E, E, E. And there we go. E, 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 E. Or in English, E, 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 which sounds almost exactly the same, right? The E's are really hard to, even for my ears, it's hard to hear the difference between, but I can feel the difference. So yeah, stay tuned for the mouth posture, and the center of gravity concept, because uh, I think that's going to be the big missing link for you. But aside from that, what I would say is, I was talking about this at the beginning, say for like with ooh, right? Fully enunciated, we like to really bring those lips around. Ooh, you do it, right? You. But that's fully enunciated, right? Usually we're going to do you, you, you. Do you like that? Do you, do you? Right? It's just this, do you. Just this little, it's not coming straight out, right? It's still sort of that dynamic little bit of rounding, but it actually doesn't move all that much and it still sounds fine. Because that's how we do it when we're not fully enunciating it, right? And so you don't necessarily have to have the right mouth posture to do that, right? So I would maybe practice trying to find what is that minimal amount of motion, and how exactly to do that motion. Um, Trying to maybe pull back from the fully enunciated form of things once you already have the fully enunciated form mastered, more or less. But then, yeah, the mouth posture in addition to that. So. Okay, is there such a thing as a glottal stop at D, B, and G? Yes, yes, there. Well, good. G. Um, yeah. When we think of a glottal stop, we think of the T, um, and I think, strictly speaking, it's only supposed to be the T. But um, playing with sounds myself, and paying attention to how English works. Remember, we have a held and a glottal, and there's a held version and a glottal version of all the stop sounds. T, d, p, b, k, k. Um, you will hear it very commonly a lot of the time with T, right? It's probably the one that uses the glottal more than anything, I think. But for example, if I say, I don't know, big, okay, I can hold it. I can say big, 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 okay. But if you hear this little extra big. It's very big. I think it's very big, big, big. Okay. It's getting sort of caught up in the nose a little bit, but it's not coming through the nose. I'm cutting it off, right? If I didn't cut it off, it'd be like big, big, right? The flap would open. And maybe it's not actually the glottis that does it, so it wouldn't technically be glottal, but there is sort of that sharp cutoff. So if you want, you can think of it as sort of like a soft stop and a hard stop, where the soft stop would be the held version, where you just kind of hold it there and it doesn't sort of cut off as much. And it's harder to hear with the voiced ones, right? Because if I say like up, 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 okay, and I feel my glottis closing, up, okay. See the T, I don't have to actually go into the T position. I can say what, and that's pure glottis. That's the only thing that's cutting off the sound. But if I do up, right, I can still cut off here. Now, with I'm going from a vowel, which is all vowels are voiced, into a P, which is voiceless. And so because I'm transitioning, I'm cutting off that voiced sound of the you really hear that sharp cutoff, and you can sort of hear, okay, this sounds kind of glottal, like up, it's like it just ends in that position. Where the B, if I say, I don't know, slob, 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 the voice of the B, or the voice of the ah, will sort of continue into that position. And that's why we get a little of the sound sort of trapped in the nose as it cuts off. And so it can be harder to hear that stop because the voice doesn't cut off like it does with the voiceless ones. So yeah. Does the word miscalculation have an aspirated K or not? Miscalculation, miscalculation, it's a miscalculation, that's a good question. Miscalculation, calculation, 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 miscalculation, miscal, miscalculation. Okay. This is a subtle thing, and I think you could look at it both ways. Because some people would probably say one way, some people would probably say the other way. So there's obviously the second C there. It's not stressed. Which you actually, I think you misspelled that. It's supposed to be culation, not clation. But that culation, that K sound is unstressed, so it's not aspirated. It's not strong. The first C, which is that first K sound, it's at the start of a stressed syllable, so it should be strong, but there's an S in front of it. Now we know that the S, whether it's t, p, or k, the S before it will weaken it and make it sound similar to like a weak voiced version. So if I say like ski, it almost sounds kind of like a weak g sound. But I think this case is a little bit different because it would normally be calculation. That would be an aspirated or strong K at the start. When we say miss, we're adding this prefix, and we're not actually saying sk. We're saying like, and it's not that the airflow stops, but it's like we're saying miscalculation without that gap. And so it's a subtle little thing, but the S doesn't seem to be dampening the K, like making it weaker as much, but it still has some effect. It's sort of a weird little case. Miscalculation. Now maybe if I'm being lazy and I say it really fast, like miscalculation, miscal, then it kind of, that S sort of maybe kind of takes over. I'm sort of like pushing it more together. So in faster speech, yeah, it could still be weak, even though it's at the start of a stressed syllable in this special case. But if you say it enunciated, if you say it, within normal range, not super fast, it should still be mostly strong, at least. Yeah. It's a very good question. Very, very good question. It's an interesting one. I wouldn't worry too much about it, honestly. I see and all those things. Yeah. No problem, White. Especially if you're new, right? And I'm here to help you guys. So the more new people, especially if I can, fix misconceptions and things about, with the IPA and whatever. Like, again, maybe I'm wrong, but focus on your ears. Focus on your ears. I don't know any better advice to give you. Okay, can you get away with dropping the flap T? There's no flap T, the flap D. Altogether in words like party, 30, dirty, especially if they are not stressed. I normally can make a flap T, but not if it's after an R sound. I see, yeah. So as I've said before, so there is no flap T. Most teachers will call it a flap T because it's written with a T, but there's no T sound. So it doesn't make any sense to call it a T. That's relying on your eyes, not your ears. It's a D sound. Now, in the case of the R plus this flap, so notice these are, whether it's an R colored vowel or just like in dirty or 30, that it's an R vowel sound, in party, it's an R colored ah. So we have a vowel, unstressed T, followed by another vowel, so it does still flap. However, when we have that R going into the flap D, your tongue is in an interesting position before the D. Normally, if you're going to flap the D, like if I just say what is, and I flap that T into a flap D, what is? So I just have to go, not, not all that bad. But if you're in right, and there might be a little bit difference if you do a retroflex or a bunched but either way, your tongue is sort of in this sort of like pulled back position using the middle of the tongue, and so from there you have to actually sort of shoot forward and tap, and then go into that E if that's the next sound, right? So instead of da, it's like da, or li. So you're still tapping, but you're going a different direction, and you have to go from that erdy. Okay, and so technically it actually gives a slightly different quality of that flap D. It doesn't sound 100% the same, but we wouldn't make any like we wouldn't distinguish it as a separate sound or anything like that. So you have to figure out how to make your tongue do that. That's the only trick to it. It's a transition problem. That's all. So make sure you can do a good make sure you can do, or R, whatever it is, and in that position. Make sure you can do a good flap. You say you can make the flap. That's fine. And then practice transitioning specifically between those two and getting that flap to move forward instead of like this, or maybe like that. If we're going from D into we have to actually tap and pull. Right? It's the opposite direction, like water. So there's water, dirty. And like what is, right? But they're all flapping. Stupid and stupid. Stupid YouTube. I don't know why YouTube would hide this. Well, I guess it's stupid, right? Gotta censor stuff. Stupid and stupendous. You or ooh. Yeah, so British people definitely would say you. Stupid, stupendous. There might be some Americans that do that. I'm not completely sure. Because I never thought Americans would say news, but apparently some do. The way I speak and the way that I recommend you speak, because it's just a lot easier, is to just use ooh. Stupid, stupendous, no problem. Same thing with news. You don't have to add that Y sound. Okay, we have less than a half hour left. Let's see if we can get to the end of this. I'm curious, are native speakers who've never learned a foreign language or studied phonetics aware A, O, or oi are two vowels blended together, or do you guys think of them as one sound? Well, obviously I've been at this for a while. I may not remember exactly how I used to think of them, but toy. I don't think we really think about it too much. If you were to ask a native, like, hey, is oi one sound or two sound? Well, they'll probably tell you like it's one sound, and then if they think about it a bit, they'll probably be like, well, it's like a moving sound, right? It's like it has two different positions or something like that. So I think if we consciously focus on it, we'll recognize, hey, there's something going on. But we don't really conceptualize that at all. We just make the sounds. So, Hamid, welcome. Hello. Is there any updates with your new course on tongue position, please? Well, it's not really a new course necessarily. That is still, I'm still exploring some things. I have a couple more videos I'm going to post, which I know it's been a couple weeks since I posted a video. Life has been super, super crazy. I apologize. I have so much going on. I'm in the process of editing a video right now, and I should be able to post it tomorrow. But for the tongue posture and all that stuff, that will be coming pretty soon. Yeah. If you use the T in two, you'd probably sound like you're over articulating to the American English speaker. And that was in, yeah. So if you say like party, 30, dirty, which you can do that if you are like really enunciating and pushing it out. You don't have to do it if you're enunciating like that, but we will sometimes do that because there is a T there. And so like say, I say 30, you think I said 13 for some reason. I say, well, I guess in that case, we might emphasize the D sound because 13 really has that strong T, but when I say no, 30, right? And then make sure that N isn't there. Or no, it's very dirty. Usually we don't do that. It's a special case. But yes, David is correct. You will usually sound like you're over articulating. I can't do one either. I cheat by doing a very soft, quick D sound instead, and I believe you can get away with that. Maybe. I didn't notice that in your speech, David. So I guess maybe you can get away with it. Hi, Josh. Welcome, Mr. MacBelly. Once again, is it wrong or not standard to do yod coalescence for the T when it comes in stress syllables like tune and tube, pronounced as tune and tube? Okay, good. Yeah, so the yod, that's, I guess, with the, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Again, some Americans, maybe. That sounds like a British thing to me. I wouldn't imagine an American saying tune or tube, like YouTube. British people, 100%. American people, no. Again, if there's a native out there, you hear them say it that way, I guess it's possible. I wouldn't say it's standard, for sure. But yeah, so I wouldn't recommend it. For neuro and neural, is it ner? Basically just a ner, like a nerd. Yeah, so this one, so like just kind of like news or news, you can say neuro or neuro, neural, neural. In these words, like with the neuro root, both of them sound okay to me. But yeah, you can just say ner, like just make it easy. Like you don't have to have that Y, it's perfectly fine. Can you say them very slow? Yeah, so neuro, neural. Yeah. Another question, please. Any idea when you will open your schedule for new students? You said it is now closed in one of your recent lives. It probably will not be opening anytime soon. So yeah, I don't usually open my schedule unless I need to. And as I probably also said before, I try not to accept you guys because number one, I'm not here to get new students, and number two, to me, it just seems unfair that like some of you would get in and some of you wouldn't because I have limited availability. And maybe I'm just looking at it wrong, but yeah, so it's not likely that you would be able to get in, unfortunately. By the way, would you say that your tongue is the same shape for man and mad, or can you notice a slight difference? I might have discovered something. Man, man, man. Um, man, 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 mad, 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 man, mad, 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 mad. Okay, so if I try to isolate the M and the A, and if I imagine I'm going to say mad or man, um, my tongue feels like it's exactly the same, but it's only when I actually go to actually realize that N or that D, which is weird because they go to the same position. I do feel a very slight different thing that my tongue wants to do. It's still an A sound. Um, but with the D, I kind of want to add a little more raising or like pushing it forward very, very slightly. Um, Maybe it might have something to do with that back flap, with that N coming in. My tongue kind of wants to maybe be a little more out of the way so that that prenasalization can come through a bit. I don't know. Let me know what you might have discovered. But they're basically the same. Uh, on that Idosa note, I've been told by an American that I sound 90% American, and it's not like I asked him for feedback. We were just having a regular chat. Oh, that's fantastic. Perfect, especially if it's unprompted. Perfect. I know I should have celebrated, but I was kind of miffed there was still 10% left. Yeah, I know. I'd be the same way. I'd be like, yeah, but no. That's okay. Keep going. I mean, if you want to keep going and get it 100%, I think you can do that. But consistency, got to put in that time on task. Again, that mouth posture might be that last little tweak that you need, but I don't know exactly what you need to work on. Maybe it could be with the rhythm a little bit here and there. I don't know. So white, the last vowel sound in onion is a schwa or I from sit. I think I might have heard someone saying it with I. She's a foreigner, by the way. Okay. So yeah, so with onion, with many, many words that could either be reduced to a schwa or that would use a schwa. Not all words, but many words. You can also, instead of using a schwa, you can use I. I think this is particularly common in Western American English, which is one of the neutral dialects. There's more than one neutral dialect in American English because they're like 99% the same. I have a lesson on that. You can look it up, neutral American English hacks or something like that. So I can't speak for the rest of the country necessarily, but I do know that it's very common. I do know based on the way I speak as a Western American, a lot of the time I'll say either or is. So I could say onion, like onion, 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 or I could say onion, 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 onion. I think I use in this particular word, I probably use more. So yeah, it's perfectly fine. It does not matter. I know I should have celebrated. Oh yeah, I already did that. What is principal in a school? In a YouTube shorts, there were a lot of comments. My principal, this, my principal, that. Who's the principal? Principal is the head of the school, right? There's like the students, and then there's the teachers that teach the students, and then the principal is the person who runs the school. So he's in charge of the school. Yeah, like the boss, basically. Um, Got to catch up, guys. We're running out of time. Okay, is there a difference between you're stupid and you stupid? I know the second one is not wrong because I see it everywhere. You stupid, you idiot. Good question. Depends on how you're using it. So you're stupid should generally work. You have to be careful because hip hop and rap have had a very, very big influence on pop culture. And so even myself, I will do this too. If I want to sound informal, because it sounds uneducated if you use it this way. If it's supposed to be you are stupid, but you don't say the R or the reduced or the contracted I just say you stupid. That sounds like broken grammar. It's wrong, according to the standard English. And it will sound very informal or uneducated, but you could use it informally. However, I can think of a context where, especially because you idiot also, but you stupid, you're not saying you are stupid, like to be stupid. Um, you're saying like especially with idiot, like you idiot, all right? And it's you're basically saying like idiot, like I'm calling you an idiot, like idiot, but I can add you before it to like really point at you. So I'm not actually saying you are an idiot, even though the meaning kind of comes out the same. But the grammar is actually different there depending on the exact context and the way you're using it. But if again, if it's supposed to be you are stupid or you are an idiot, because like with idiot, it would actually be the broken grammar, the informal one would be not you idiot, it would be you an idiot, because we need that and there, right? You an idiot. Um, so you idiot is fine because it's a slightly different way of using the language, but you an idiot is broken because we need the R. So yeah, I know it's a subtle point. It might be confusing, but um, that's that. But why not the first one? The latter sounds broken with the R. Is there a difference between feeling by lyrics, heard by words, or yourself? Yes. I mean, if you're very direct, obviously it can be very rude. Nobody likes to be called stupid. um, with stupid, idiot, moron, imbecile. Some people say imbecile. That's another pronunciation. Sounds kind of fancy. I mean, I don't think they're like, they don't sound like a really strong curse word or anything like the F word, but they're not nice. They're not polite. Um, now, if you if you really wanted to amplify it, you can say like oh you fucking idiot, right? And you're like you're angry. You're like really trying to say oh you're like so stupid. You know, you throw that F word in there and it amplifies anything. Those that have never been abroad or those that has never been abroad. Okay, so let's think about it. Those is plural. So they have never been abroad, right? Um, so it would be have, not has. Has is singular. All I want to say is that, versus all I have to say is that. Those are both grammatically fine. They do have very slightly different meanings. Have to say can actually have two completely different meanings depending on how you're using it. I don't really have time to go into all the details of the nuances here, but um, if you're using have to not as like an obligation, because we can use it a slightly different way in this phrase, it's not actually an obligation. It's like what you have to say, like this is what I have that I want to say, instead of what I have to say as an obligation. Then it's basically the same as all I want to say. Um, they just feel slightly different. Some native speakers do randomly switch between exactly. I've heard a girl from San Francisco pronounce mountain and curtain like mountain curtain. Yeah, I do that too. The T's held. It sounded weird to me then because I was used to hear to say hearing. I was used to hearing a schwa there. Okay. Is the P in supposed to unaspirated when we change it to supposed to? Ooh, good. See, Quinn. Finn has the hard questions. I was going to say Finn and question at the same time, so I say Quinn. Finn has the hard questions. Or does it retain that both there? Interesting. Yeah. So supposed to, obviously, it's at the start of a syllable. There's a syllable before it. Supposed to. If we drop that syllable and just sort of move that S over to the P, supposed to, 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 supposed to happen, supposed to happen, supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen. Supposed to happen. Yeah, it does. It does seem like it unaspirates. It becomes weak. Because now it's like spot or speed or whatever. So it weakens it. Um, that's so amazing. I didn't know that was real. I thought it was a mistake. Your English is really messy. Can you pronounce what did my character do as what my character do? Good question. And if so, can that D become a B because of the M after? Also a good question. Okay, so yeah, what did, fully enunciated what did, right? T and the D can blend into flap D, wooded, wooded, wooded. You can sort of try to reduce that even more, make it like a contraction, like what apostrophe D, which we wouldn't write, but it sounds basically the same, wooded, 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 just maybe a little shorter. And then, especially if we're speaking quickly, what did my character do? And we kind of hold that D just for like an extra second, instead of pushing it out and doing like flapping it into the other D. What did my character do? It's a really weird special case, but yes, and that sounds like past tense. Because if it were present tense, it would be like what does my character do? What does my character do? Or actually, what's my character do? Yeah, we can actually, usually doesn't contract to apostrophe S, it's for B, but you can do it with does in that case. What's my character do? So this would be the past tense version. We wouldn't confuse it. What did my character do? Can the D become a B? What did my character do? Wait, what did my character do? What did my character do? Yes, it becomes a little bit unclear. If I try to say it feels natural. It sounds fine. Consciously, I'm like, that doesn't seem like it should be right, but it seems right. Yeah. So yeah, we have sort of an extreme contraction / reduction here from what did to what. And then that D also moving into a B. So what my character do? You're probably gonna want to stop that B there too. What my character do? What my character do? Definitely don't push out the B. We don't want to say what but my character. That would be completely wrong. So yeah, good, very good question. Very, very good question. I should make that into a short. I really should. That's a good one. Since you teach the high schwa of good as having a little bit of lip rounding, not required. I don't know. Is that just how I teach it? I thought that's how everybody teaches it. I just say it's not required. What would happen if you were smiling when telling a funny story? Yeah, it was really good. Good, 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 good. So the lips, I'm smiling, my lips are kind of out this way, but then my lips want to still get that So instead of being like it's uh it's just there's extra tension here. That's all. I use words like tuck and look. How would you maintain the contrast between tuck and tuck, luck, and look while smiling? Well, it's primarily the tongue, right? As I said, the lips aren't required. So if I'm smiling, I say tuck, 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 or tuck, tuck, tuck. They're still very, very different. To a non-native, they might sound very, very similar, but to me, they sound pretty distinct. So is it all about tongue position? Yes. Do the lips round a bit when you say pull? What about push? Does the L make it a bit different or not really? Okay, so with that L, the way that I teach it, and really the way that I speak, is right. It should be like puh, like in push, but anytime there is like a high schwa or a schwa that would be L colored, you could basically just do the half L. So instead of it being like pull, pull or something like that, it's just pull, 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 pull. Easy. So it'd actually be p plus half L. That's it, just those two sounds, pull. Where push does use the high schwa. So technically, yes. In the way that other people speak, maybe it's closer, but I like to make things simpler. And do the lips round? Pull, 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 pull. Pull the door. Pull, pull. The lips might want to come out a little bit. It's not required. Push, push. Again, for that the lips can kind of come out, but it's not required. It's something that we naturally do often, but it's not required. Have to get used to not pronouncing, used to doing something, right? Used to not pronouncing, or get used to doing something. Used to in the past tense is different. Have to get used to not pronouncing the P at the start of words. My urge to pronounce it is irresistible, but in the following case, mob psycho, 100, yeah. So, well, in that case, it's not that you shouldn't pronounce P at the start of words. There are plenty of P's at the start of words that should be pronounced. Most of the time, it will be pronounced. In the word psycho, it's spelled PS because that comes, if I remember right, from the Greek spelling, psycho, psyche, right? And words of Greek origin like that, that we just say with an S, they're coming spelled with a PS. Same thing with like the PH, like photo, right? It's just an F sound, but it's spelled PH. It's just spelling. So yeah, this is actually not a P at all. Now, if you're used to pronouncing it because you trusted your eyes, which is the first big mistake that everybody makes, then you would try to say psycho, but you don't want to do that. Okay. Where the P is after a B sound or any other sound that touches the lips, in that case, you do really pronounce the P. So like a B and then a P or any other sound that touches the lips, like an M. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of confusion here. So as I was saying, like say it's like pick, you do want to pronounce that P. There's a P there. Psycho is a special case. So I don't know if that cancels out your question. I don't completely understand your question, because most of the time the P will be pronounced at the start of a word. So I guess that would answer that. Zoe, hi there, welcome. I got a few minutes left, guys. So anybody wants to get some last minute questions and really, really quick, we can try to do that. But let's get to Daniela here. Welcome, Daniela. How are you doing? And Daniela, I know you kind of come, you seem to come a little bit later sometimes. Unfortunately, I have to cut the live streams by about a half hour. So instead of 2.5 hours, it'll just be 2 hours. So just keep that in mind. I know people are in different time zones, but I mean, I got to work with my own schedule, and yeah. So just saying, it is how it is. How are you doing? I'm pretty good. I'm trying to get the true T in English. I really hate that term, but I feel it's sounding as the Spanish T. Any tip? I feel they aren't the same. Spanish T, they're absolutely not the same. But again, I don't have the either. So yeah, okay. So the Spanish T is dental. Okay, it's flatter. So t t t t t. Now, even if you don't touch the teeth, which technically you don't have to make it sound flatter, it could be maybe up here still, but it's flatter, right? T t t t t. So it doesn't sound as crisp. It still sounds like a T, right? It's obviously a T. It's not something else. But it just sounds kind of dull or flat. Okay. Now the English T, the true T, is very, very crisp. Okay, so we want to hear that air come through nice and strong, and it's gonna, like, it's almost like it clicks, right? Like t, t. I can't snap apparently, but right. So t t t. Now the way that you do this, again in Spanish, whether you actually touch your teeth or not, I know it's very common to actually touch the teeth because it's supposed to be a dental T. You're making your tongue flatter. Okay, what you want to do in English, number one, do not touch the teeth. Okay, because the English T does not touch the teeth. So if you're touching the teeth, that's your first mistake. So no touching the teeth. You want to be behind the teeth. Okay, not back here. There's a little bump here, and then your mouth goes up like this. You don't want to be back here. You don't want to be up here. You want to be more or less on that bump. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but and then you don't want to go straight up, because if you do that, you're going to be like ta ta ta, and that's going to sound Indian. It sounds like an Indian accent. Tu tu tu. Okay, you don't want to go straight up. You don't want to be as flat as you are in Spanish. Ta ta ta. Okay, because in Spanish we'll kind of use like this whole front area of the tongue more or less. English, what you want to do, you want to use the tip but you want to make it a little bit flat. So not it's more like and you're just going to take that tip. It's just a little bit flat. So you bring it up here, you make it slightly flat, t, 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 and it sounds nice and crisp, nice and clear. So just play around with that. Okay, because B and P both touch the lips, I don't understand the middle. Is it like mob psycho altogether, or you stop at the end of B, making it a stop sound and not pronouncing the P at all? Okay, so again, this comes from focusing on your eyes. Okay, let's focus on the sound. Mob has b. Psycho has s-I-co or s-I-k-o. Okay, so between the two, we have a B and we have an S. So you're going from a B to an S. There is no P. Okay, the P is just spelling. So just pretend that there is no P. You want to say like, if I use my phonetic transcription method, I'm already over time here, be like mob psycho, something like this. Okay, mob psycho. So you're just going from a B to an S. It as like if I say I don't know, I can't think of a word that ends in a B. Lab and then sign. Okay, lab sign, mob psycho. It's exactly the same transition. It's just a B to an S. Completely ignore the P. There is no P at all. Okay. So yeah, the P is an illusion of your eyes. In Washington and in Utah, they pronounce it like mountain with the short I vowel, the T before being a glottal, mountain, instead of the usual mountain. Yeah, it's a range. It doesn't matter. I've talked about that before. It's a range. Some people might just pronounce it one particular way, but you can say mountain or ton. It doesn't matter. It or does not matter. Mountain, 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 or mountain. It's all a range for the same word. All of them are acceptable. It's whatever way it comes out. It does not matter. It does not matter at all. I notice they say button like button. Yeah, same thing. Exactly the same thing. Button, button, button. Does not matter. Didn't know that. Thank you. I kind of like that. So take care. May the true T follow you until the next live stream. I hope not. I don't want that thing bothering me. But anyway, yes. Thank you guys very much. I'm gonna go now. Hopefully my new mic, when I get it, will not make me sound like Darth Vader, and we'll see next week how that goes. But next week, same time, 11:30 to now 1:30, and bring your questions. So I will see you guys next time.